Good evening, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, Stephen. How you doing? I'm really good.
Good
really
stuff, mate. Good stuff. Thanks for coming on, mate. Nice to have you on. And just to let everybody know, it's going to be like this for the next 2 weeks. I'll be back on Instagram doing some live chats. And good to have Stephen on, something a little bit different. And instead of talking about Newcastle United, going to talk about Steve's fantastic life, his interesting life, and things that are coming up for him. So, Stephen, first of all, let's talk about where you were born. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
I was born here, Steve, in England, and then when I was a young boy, about 12 months old, I was taken over the water to family over there in Belfast. So I stayed there till I was 9. That was the early 70s, in the civil unrest and all the troubles over there.
Yeah. Can you remember much about your childhood in Ireland?
I can, yeah. Look, the people over there are the salt of the earth, just like everywhere else, Steve. They was trying to do their best under a lot of pressure, a lot of hard times. There wasn't no money about in them days. It was a very suspicious atmosphere because of all the trouble and the politics and all the rest of it. And but they're really good people. They was wonderful people. I was brought up with really good people. They taught me good values. But, there was a lot of trouble and different stuff. And it could just start like that, Steve. Riots, bombs, guns, shooting, stuff like that. So, yeah, I remember enough, Steve,
Was it something that that affected you? I mean, were you, as a child, you're not really knowing what's going on around you. Was it something which scared you as a child?
As a child, you don't know anything else, Steve. You really don't. This is your reality. How would you know? You don't know anything. It's a really small window into the mind of a child.
Yeah.
You're building your life in your reality and what you think the world looks like to you. So it's the people around you and your experiences. I mean, I had some very, very traumatic stuff that happened over there. That is not good for any child growing up. That was really unfortunate. That's in the book, and that was quite painful.
Would you say it was a trauma that you suffered out there then?
It was generally really good. You have to understand, because of the way it was socially, I wasn't really allowed out of the house too much anyway. Because I left there when I was 9. I was a really young kid. But of course, you have to go out, and I'd be out a little bit. And few things happened, and I remember them, and they was quite traumatic. I mean, there's one thing I can say, it's in the book, and I always remembered this, Steve, and I carried it for so many years, and I didn't speak about it to no one. But, when I was a kid, I went out, riots used to just form like that in them days, and I was really young. I got caught in the melee, the shooting started, buses on fire, roadblocks, all the running, shouting, petrol bombs, terrifying, So I hid under a hedge, as you do a child, like a camp kind of a thing, what you knew, and there was heavy fire coming down this street. It was lucky I got off this road at this time, because it would just change just like that, Steve, right? And I see someone get shot in front of me, I was looking through the hedge, they look big to me, but now looking back, they was only young. They can't have been more than early 20s themselves. Balaclava on and all that. I mean, he died in front of me, but the thing I really remember was all of it. But he was asking for his mother. Please go. I mean, that was hard for me. I didn't, I carry that to this day, but I carried that for a long, long time, and I didn't speak to it. It's only in the last couple of years that I've started to talk about stuff, Steve. Yeah,
which is understandable. When you were a kid growing up, what were you like at school? Were you much of a scholar?
To be honest, I was okay, Steve. I mean, in them days, the early years, you'd be terrified over there not to do your own work. It's really how they was, right? They was really fierce over there. But I was quite quite bright. You know, I do my stuff. You know, didn't have a problem doing my work. And when I come to this country, it was yeah, I was okay at school. I didn't really like school too much as such.
Mm-hmm. Were you into your sports and stuff like that?
I used to love the sports. That was the main thing for me, because I was kind of one of them ones who was kind of always up the front or in trouble, Steve.
Yeah.
Bit of a joker, you know, always there when something was happening. But, you know, I didn't really like the certain lessons, but I love me sports, football, rugby, stuff like that. Anything really that wasn't too heavy with the schoolwork, Steve.
Yeah. You say football. A lot of the people who watch my podcast are football fans. Did you support a team back then?
You know, you can't do right for doing wrong with these questions, Steve. And look, you know, the truth, but look, the truth is, I love the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's like anything, I love that. I was never no big, massive football guy. I loved the game. I played it like all the kids. But it's like anything, even with boxing now, I just love big games. And I love when there's big games and there's quality players and they're pitting their wits against each other. That's what really gets me. So I wasn't really pick a team as such, where I was really for a team, any team, Steve.
So obviously you spent the best part of your early childhood, as you say, in London, then in Belfast. When did you come back to London?
When I was 9, I mean, I come over, you know, and I had a little bit of time where, you know, I was in Hertfordshire just for a little bit, because I went through the care system as well, Steve.
Yeah, what was that like?
You know, that was very brutal, you know, and in the book there's a lot of very brutal stuff in there, Steve, which goes into some, you know, a lot of abuse, not sexual nature, but very violent shit. That was going on, don't get me wrong, it didn't happen to me, Steve, but, you know, there's stuff in there that goes into the book where, not good stuff, not good.
Obviously, you know, you hear a lot about the care homes, especially back in, you know, in those days, you know, in the, you know, the 70s in particular, and a lot of abuse, as you say, it doesn't have to be sexual. A lot of it was just violence, bullies and stuff like that. Was that the kind of stuff that you suffered? Yeah,
I mean, you know, there's a lot of kids in there for a lot of different reasons. I mean, I was in there because I was, a couple of reasons, but I was more of a naughty boy who was getting in trouble, so I got a care order. But there was other kids who was in there for their own protection, and they needed to be in there. They needed care and support. But we was all in some hard places we was sent to, where everyone was in together, and there was some people in there, they was really, you know, they was abusers, Steve, in a violent way. Yeah. You know, and even then, for me, I knew that was wrong, and I'd fight against them. So I used to get it a lot more than other kids, because there'd be a little group of us who knew that was wrong, even though we couldn't really fight against it, because we was only young kids then, we would certainly try. So we used to get more of the attention in the violent way than maybe some others.
When you're in that kind of position, I mean, you either, I would imagine, you know, luckily I was never in that situation myself, but you either fight back or you just accept it. And I mean, do you think it made the person that you became? You know, were you a victim of the circumstances, a product of the environment, if you like?
Steve, definitely. Look, you know, I mean, we hear this question all the time. Absolutely. We get forged as human beings by what we go through. And a big part of that is our experiences, especially our adversities. I mean, I was forged by pain. There's no other way. Because you know what happens is human beings, sometimes we go around in circles and we'll keep making a lot of the same mistakes. But when it's very painful for us, we say, hold on a minute, you know, I need to take stock here.
Yeah.
And we get things a lot clearer and we expedite what we need to. We get the lessons because we don't want to go back there, right? So, you know, when you look at my life, it was constantly this, Steve. So that's a good, even now, but in a positive way, in a business entrepreneurial sense.
Yeah.
Because I really have to solve big shit problems and different things, you know. But we're forged for that. But it's positive today. In them days, it was a lot of bad stuff because we was learning and we was trying to find our way.
Yeah. So obviously, as you grew older, you moved into a world of crime. You know, how did that come about? You know, what was the turning point in your life that forced you into that occupation?
I was an anxious kid, Steve. I was very unsettled, obviously. And the truth is now, looking back with hindsight, I didn't have a conventional, normal upbringing. You know, I didn't even have an anchor. I was constantly moving. Even in prison, when I went on to do all them sentences, I was constantly moving, like a wandering Jew, really. I mean, I say that with a family, but I've always been a kind of a wanderer. Now I'm not. For the first time in my life these last years, I've anchored my life with good works. But all the way through my life, it was very, very unsettled. So even then, I had to fend for myself. So, you know, this kind of, we form groups, there's there's peer pressure, we know that. You know, we want to belong and we want to be liked and all this stuff. My answer was always to do more and be more, Steve. I say this, but it really was. You know, it really was. And that kind of set me right up and programmed me to keep going in a kind of a lot more gamer way, if you want to put it, than other people around me. I mean, this is the truth. You know, this is the truth.
Did you get involved in petty crime, though? I mean, you know, when you read a lot, obviously I've written a lot of books about various criminals. You hear that, you know, some of them started off as thieves and, you know, maybe, you know, doing a hoist up or breaking into somewhere. You know, was that your game? You know, how did you first get involved in crime? What was your first crime? Was it nicking a packet of polos from the newsagents, or, you know, what was your first bit of villainy that you could talk about?
It was a lot of silly stuff, Steve. You know, we was in homes and we used to run away because it was so bad. I mean, you know, we didn't have any sense, really. You're talking about a 13-year-old kid, you know, 14-year-old kid, and 12 even. Do you know what I mean? So TDA, we'd take cars and do chases with the police. Yeah. We'd nick stupid things that was just nonsense, just a nuisance, really. And but you know, they sent me away to prison on my 14th birthday. So I remember it.
Young offenders?
DC it was called then, detention centre.
Yeah.
You know, it was a sharp shock. I mean, I was so bad, not with like serious stuff. I was a nuisance, Steve.
Yeah.
It didn't know what to do with me because I kept running away and going back and running away and going back. You know, that was the thing. So so they put it off until my 14th birthday so they could give me a sentence. So they gave me a sentence, and that was the first time.
Did you feel guilty? Did you feel like you'd done anything wrong? Because, you know, I remember being locked up when I was 17. I got locked up for I was fitted up by the police, really, which wasn't a pleasant situation to be in. It was a situation where I was walking along after a Newcastle game. I'd been out for some pints I shouldn't have had. I was actually reenacting a goal, kicking a plastic container down the street in Newcastle with one of my mates. We kicked the container onto the road and it landed on the road. The next thing you know, a police van comes around the corner. Well, it was unmarked. The side doors opened and they came out and nicked us. And they basically nicked me and my mates, said that we caused the vehicle to swerve, that the bottle had hit the windscreen. Now, for me, personally, I was then put in a cell at 7 o'clock at night. I was let out at 3:30 in the morning. My parents weren't notified till midnight. And for me, that particular situation, that affected me. Now, I could have gone one of two ways. I could have rebelled against the police and become a criminal. I didn't. I did learn my lesson. I thought, I don't want this to happen again. I had to go to court. I got a 12-month bind over. And from my perspective, that changed my life forever. I had a distrust of the police, which, you know, is no surprise because they basically made me sign a piece of paper when I was under the influence. And ultimately, I admitted to what I'd done. I was wet behind the ears, naive. I'd never been in trouble. But that made me feel terrible. It was the fact that I took the shame to my parents. And ultimately, I ended up in a cell. And, you know, it wasn't a proud moment for the young Steve Wraith, and my life changed for the better from there. But, you know, from your perspective, how did you feel? Did you have a conscience about it? Did you feel, I know it wasn't anything major that you did, it was just lad stuff at 14 and you were running away from you know, running away because of your circumstance, but did you feel any guilt, or did you feel, you know, were you like immune to it?
That's a very good question, Steve, really. You know, and what you said there, like yourself, it's good that you learn by that. Not because, you know, there are many things wrong with this world, the police and all different institutes. We know that.
Yeah.
But it's good that you learn, because it's only when we get to a certain point in our lives, all of us, that we have enough sense to make the best of things. So that was a good thing. But going back to my thing then, it's strange because I'd already, because of them experiences over that last, certainly 4 years, you know, and the upset of it all, I was desensitized in silly ways that I didn't even realise, you know, and that was just due to the fact that I had to fend for myself in a feral kind of a way. So it was just another thing that happened, and I had to deal with it. It wasn't a nice thing, but I did have a conscience because I knew I was doing all this stuff, so I was going to get in trouble for it. So it was just another link in the chain.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, you know, from your perspective, did the detention centres in those days, did they do any good? Because you hear a lot of people speak about detention centres. I know when I've spoken to people who have, you know, done books with, they've often said they were just breeding grounds, a place to meet like-minded people and to build up your criminal connections, rather than, you know, and obviously the fact that you were getting, you know, assaulted, beaten in places like that by the screws that should have known better. You know, it was toughening you up. So did you find that yourself?
I like to look at the real facts of this stuff. The statistics said that it wasn't really doing what it was meant to do, right? Make things better, right?
Yeah.
My experience was that when I was there, you know, I mean, I remember being in that, you know, I went to Send. Yeah. Send, all right? You know, and there was the big corridor and all that. But when we go into that washroom, we'd just be a load of skinny kids, really, now, looking back, all shapes and sizes, all up against it. But there was a lot of people there who would become notorious, like in the Tottenham riots, for instance, and different stuff, who would be major criminals later on, who I would travel all the way through sentences with, even then, Steve. And there was three there, who I would go all the way through. So that's, you know.
Yeah. How long did you serve then, your first time in detention centre?
3 months it was. They gave me about as much, I think, as I could have got then. Yeah. It was 3 months, which was like a lifetime then.
Yeah. So when you came out, you know, obviously, let's take us through, like, you know, just how you progressed. Did you learn your lesson, or did you go on to bigger things then?
Yeah, I progressed into serious crime very, very quickly, just by the very nature of the way that I was and the people I knew, you know, in the area I was in. There wasn't a lot else open for me at that point. I'm not saying it was right, but option-wise and the way I was forged and the way I was going, you know, I kept going, Steve. And, you know, I was around a lot of people, obviously, who was doing a lot of serious stuff. You know, and the older ones, they teach the younger ones, you know, and I was one of them ones who was quite close to some, you know, a lot of serious people. So, you know, I see a lot of things before my time, Steve, really.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we see things, you know, in a different light now, because, you know, things have moved on so quickly, and, you know, kids now sitting at home have got access to the internet. They can see, you know, films, documentaries. You know, in the old days when we were younger, it was picking up a book. You know, my first connection with the world of gangsters was reading the book about the Cray twins, The Profession of Violence. And you know, with those, you know, was it something that you aspired to? I mean, you know, a lot of kids when they're young, they have posters of boxers and footballers on the wall. But you know, were you inspired by these gangsters? Did you think, you know, I could actually make something in my life by doing this? It's a good way to make a living. Was that something you aspired to be?
You know, I didn't really have a supportive family in the other ways that I said.
Yeah.
So when I reached that point, it was very easy, conducive for me to, you know, I had to do what I knew and like I say, I didn't have a lot of options. There is a bit of that, obviously. I mean, I tell the truth, Steve. I don't need to go around the houses. I'll say it how it is, right?
Yeah.
You know, you live this life. Of course, there is a bit of that in the mind of someone who's very, of course. But it, you know, it wasn't that. There was a lot more of that. We had to survive, and we was put into a lot of situations that we had to come forward. I mean, that was, you know, that was the thing more than anything else. You know, that was the real life stuff.
Yeah. Gaz Houston says Kirk Levington was a horrendous detention centre. Young lads being physically abused violently. You don't want to go back there. So Gaz really just, you know, agreeing with what you say. But, you know, he's obviously talking about Kirk Levington, which is up north. John Bragg 34 asks a question to you. He says, if you could change anything from your past, what would you pick, Steve?
What would I pick? I would pick that in my younger years that I really had someone around me who was supportive, strong, and for me in all the right ways. Not that there'd have to be loads of people, but at least even one, and that would have been a very good thing for me, I think.
Yeah. David Last couldn't watch today, but he's obviously followed your story with interest and watched your podcast with James English, which I did as well, which was really good. So anybody wants to spend a good hour and a half watching a documentary style interview with Steve, you can watch James English's podcast on YouTube. But yeah, David Last asked a couple of questions, so I will ask them because he's going to watch this back later. He says, for someone that doesn't know about you, Stephen, he says, what was your main crime that you got up to?
Armed robbery.
Yeah.
Armed robbery. Armed robbery or theft.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same thing. One's heavier than the other, but it's kind of the same thing. But yeah.
Did you work alone, Steve, or were you part of a team?
Usually with people. Sometimes alone. I mean, I was someone who, you know, I was a career criminal, was a target criminal. Yeah. You know, I'd go out, but, you know, pretty much usually with others.
Obviously, I'll ask you the question because I've interviewed a few people who've been on the pavement. You know, what was the thing that you got out of it the most? Was it the adrenaline rush, or was it the financial gain? Was it a bit of both?
I think it was all of it, Steve. It was certainly a buzz. It's a certain thing. People, you know, that thing of switching on a light switch and then there's no way back. You're in it and you repeat this. It's you know, it's what you do. There's a thing to that. Anyone who's been through that kind of thing would know. So of course there is a kind of a rush there, a buzz. I mean, I do know people who that's all they talk about, really. You know, there was this kind of thing. They get that. But of course, you know what? It was a lot more than that. It was, look, like I say, we had to do that stuff and we've done, but there was many, you know, I wish I could have done something else, Steve. It was the lifestyle. It was the money. We had to survive. You know, it was the fraternity and the groups that was close to us and who we trusted and who trusted us and who we survived with. So it was a lifestyle, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, again, many of the armed robbers that I've spoken to, or retired armed robbers, have also said that the money that they got, you know, they spent it, you know, as quick as they got it. Was that the same case with you? Because it's you know, it's dirty money, really. You know, you earn £1,000 legally, then there's nothing wrong with that. You earn £10,000 illegally, you've got to spend it because otherwise, you know, you've got to be on your toes, haven't you, really?
Steve, that's a great question, right? Yeah. And the truth of it is Did we, you know, are there fortunes one minute and not the pot to piss in the next? I mean, that, you know, it's as simple as that. I mean, that's what you're talking about. So there's no normality to a life like that. There's no balance to a life like that. There's no anchor to a life like that. And really, look, you know, the truth of it is, even if you go and nick £1 million, let's just say, right? Even if you nicked £1 million, when you're doing them kind of thing, when they do get you, and let's face it, you're up against it. It's always with wrong uns, technology. You know, you don't get away with it forever. So if you do get caught, you know, you're going to go away. You're going to get 15 years. Now, if you break that £1 million down after, you know, that's if you've been clever enough to do something with it and they don't rape it back off you and confiscate everything, which is their trick anyway, and you do the bird, then, you know, is there any amount of money that you can put on that torture and losing your life and your family and your children growing up? No way. No way, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem with armed robberies and robberies of, you know, you have to have a degree of planning. You're relying on a card marker, you're relying on other people, and ultimately it comes down to trust, doesn't it?
A lot can go wrong, Steve. You know that. A lot can go wrong, especially when you're doing things that really you shouldn't be doing. More can go wrong. It's just the nature of it, you know. I mean, now, for instance, you know, it is what it is. Anyone who's been through that, they know that. They'll have the same experience. Yeah, there's good times. Yeah, of course you have good times and there's wonderful times. But for me personally, I can only speak for me. When I stack up what you would call the good times or the glory stuff to the pain, suffering, the madness, the incarceration, the being robbed of your liberty, you know, and your human dignity and all that, there's no way does that balance up.
No.
It is what it is, Steve.
David, second question was, how long have you actually done in prison? I mean, you got a big sentence, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I've got a few big sentences. I mean, in this country, well, it used to be, I'm not so sure now, but, you know, they used to say 5 years and over was a long-term sentence, Steve, right? Yeah. I mean, I got a 5 just for firearms. I got 17 years. That was all put together with different sentences. It was a 14 and a 3 consecutive for firearms, which made it 17. And I'd done a 3, I'd done a 2.5, and I'd done a 3 months. So if you had, plus I had 3 trials at the Old Bailey for armed robbery. I beat one of them. The second one I beat, but I got convicted of possession of a firearm. That's when I got out, and then I was on home leave, and then I got nicked for the big sentence. You see how this kind of come together. So, you know, when you think about all of that and the life, and you think about even the time on remand, which was 13 months, I think, for that first armed robbery trial. Yeah. Put that together.
How did you adapt to prison? I mean, you know, obviously in the prison you go in and you've done a detention center, but a man's prison is completely different. And when you're looking at a long sentence, how did that affect you mentally? How did you prepare for it mentally?
It's look, the truth is I don't think anyone can prepare for something like that mentally. We get it and that's the end of it. You need to deal with it. I mean, for me, you know, you need to survive, you need to do what you need to do to get through it. It's hard enough, to be honest with you, especially when you're Cat A and all that, because you're not a normal prisoner. And they go to break you, Steve. They're not interested in rehabilitation. It's about containment. You know that. It's a different way of doing a sentence. I went all the way through. I got released on Cat A from the big sentence, which is unbelievably rare. But, you know, it was what it was. But I kind of always knew I was going to get a lump of bird, a lump of prison. I just knew it. But nothing prepares you. And really, to be honest with you, it's about surviving that, Steve, is hard enough. If you think, you know, on that sentence, I'd done 11 years and 9 months straight on the book. So that's 12 years. I mean, how do you prepare for something like that, which you don't know what's coming and you've never read before?
Did you behave in prison? Steve, were you a model prisoner, or did you have a few run-ins with the screws and the governors?
Absolutely not was I a model prisoner. In fact, I was the other end of the scale. No, it's well documented. And I said, Steve, I'll say this because look, we all get older, wiser, and we calm down a bit and all that stuff, right? I wouldn't advise it, but for me, it's the way that I've done it. The truth is, I found it hard to cope, like anyone does. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
But again, my answer was I felt they was torturing the life out of me, and they was spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. I just couldn't put up with that, and every time I used to try, I'd wanna have it easy and balanced and do my part. It's like they wouldn't let me, so I quickly got into that pattern, and because I was in units as well. I was in Hull unit. I was in Brixton unit. I was in Wood Hill unit. For the most disruptive prisoners in the country. I was on the ghost train, Steve.
Yeah.
For about 3 years. I was in the cages in Wakefield with Charlie Bronson. So once you start getting that to your name, it's hard to get out of it, Steve. It doesn't help doing a sentence easy, that's for sure.
It was quite good yesterday because I had a phone call off Charlie, 9 o'clock in the morning, as always on a Saturday. And he was singing, his favourite song, Saturday, 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 down the phone, which I have to listen to. He then goes on to tell us that he watched a film that I was in, which I recorded a few years ago, called Rise of the Foot Soldier 3, where, of course, I was playing a prisoner. And he says, Steve, I can't believe I've seen you in this film. He says, it was the best prison film I've ever seen. So it was a good compliment from Charlie that we actually got it right. I mean, any stories about Charlie? Did you get on all right with Charlie? I mean, I've visited him a few times in prison. I know what he's like. He's a genuine fella, and to be honest, not as mad as people think he is. But I mean, what was it like just being in the unit? Tell people what it was like being in the unit.
Charlie's my good pal. I mean, if you look in Charlie's book, Bronson, I'm in it 3 times.
Yeah, I've read that. Yeah.
I'm in Living Legends as well. I've got a page in Living Legends.
Yeah.
So it's all there from the old days when we was doing that stuff. And say hello to Charlie, by the way. He go, where's you talking to Stevie, right? Okay. But look, funny thing was, they're doing the film now and all that. The screenplay's nearly written. Yeah. But me and the screenwriter, Lance, he's a wonderful writer. Just before this lockdown thing, we was going through the Cat A process, Steve, to go and see Charlie.
Right.
To go and see him ourselves about some stuff, make sure he's all right and all that, in the film. Of course, all this happened, but we're still going through with that, so you've been up there. So he sent us some letters and that, sent me a letter. He said, oh, Steve, always knew, and, you're inspiring people. I love Charlie, like because I get Charlie. He's very, very, very old school ways about him that are very good. He's very strict with him. This is one of the things. He doesn't break how he sees certain things. And that's the way to do it. But he hasn't killed no one. He needs to. You see, Charlie is unfortunately the way they attach this profile to you in there to make it easier for them. You become, they make it like that. So it's just so hard for you. But he hasn't killed anyone, Steve.
No.
He needs to come home, right?
It's a tragic set of circumstances. Jeff Newcomb asks a question. He says, what was the worst prison that you spent time in, Stephen? And what's your thoughts on private prisons compared to the black and whites?
I was in quite a few bad prisons, Steve. What they would do, Doc 1 was in charge of the Cat A moves and all that. Yeah. So, it was well known. They'd have a strategy for every Cat A, it'd be different. So my one was I'd get one good move and then 3 bad ones to put me up against it. Then they'd give me a bit of light again. They just seemed to do this pattern with me, right? Yeah. I went to, Winston Green was a naughty one. Wakefield was very bad because we'd be down in the cages and down the block. All the nonsense are on the wing there, but they've got the control unit there where the cages are there. You know, so they was mob banded there, you know, and you went there and they was waiting for you, Steve. That was one of them places. Was Leeds was another one, Armley. That was another one. Winston Green was another one. Wano could be like that. Liverpool, Walton was another one. You know, Winston Green was another one. You know, they had certain places for that, Steve.
Yeah. Red Rose, who's one of my contacts in Saudi, she says, "Where are you actually going, Stephen? Because you're sitting in your car." She says, "Where are you going? Have you been out on your walk?"
Hi to everyone, really. You know, I hope you're well at this crazy time, you know, as the world is trying to sort itself out. It's the same here. You know, truth is, we've just been doing a lot of work like everyone, doing our best to make sure the family's looked after and all our affairs are after. We've really been stuck in doing a lot of work because there's a lot coming out. So we just shot out to get some food quickly. And of course, I have to be here with you, Steve. So we pulled over to make sure I'm here for you.
Steve, I've got to be honest, mate. It's the best reception I think I've ever had on an Instagram call. You've got people sitting in houses and that. It's as clear as day. So it's fair play to you. What I want to get onto now is obviously you came out of prison, and I think the fascinating thing about your story is, you know, you've reformed, you've come out, you've really become a big hit on the speaking circuit. Tell us about that and how that happened.
I wanted to make things better, Steve. You know, there's one thing I can say is, look, whether it's filmmaking, writing a book, writing a song, public speaking, anything like that, it's about authenticity.
Yeah.
You know, audiences will forgive us anything. We're only human if we mess up or whatever. What they won't forgive you is if you're misleading them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had a story and I had traveled my journey and I wanted to make things better, Steve. So the power was in my authenticity, you know, and I wanted to make things better. So that was and I've spoke on massive stages, and there'll be a lot more to come as well, you know, and I love that. That was part of, you know, I mean, I went into prisons as well, Steve. Both, I went into prisons, male and female, up in the north especially as well. I went into Leeds again, which was quite an experience because I used to be the one that was taken like the plague round the back with the dogs, like, you know, get away, you know, slung in a cell. But going back there and going through the front door with governors there and all that, want to shake your hand, and it was kind of cathartic for me, Steve. You know, but all I thought about was I was just aware of the pain in there that people was going through, and that was my focus. Do you know what I mean? You know, so, you know, I'm glad I've done that. It wasn't easy, but it was something that had to be done, you know, and that was along the way. So I'm glad I've done it.
This is a question from me again. Do you feel the prison system rehabilitated you, or do you feel you rehabilitated yourself?
The prison service, Steve, it didn't work for me, did it? I mean, if I was released as a Cat A, you know, at 6 o'clock in the evening from Belmarsh, when the court cells are coming in from court, and they've got old Bill out there, that is not rehabilitation, is it? That's crazy madness. Yeah. So I really had to. Do you know what? This is worth saying. I said this the other night, and you know, someone close to me, that the hatred kept me going for a long time, Steve. It really did, right? But towards the end of the sentence, I was wise enough to know. I said to myself, "Hold on a minute here. You're destroying yourself with this. You need to sort yourself out." You know, it's just so. Which took me a lot of years because you get institutionalized. Yeah. So I had to go through the fire for many a jump, many a year, you know, to get myself back to a normality and sort myself out, Steve. Yeah. And of course that journey continues. So this is very important, you know.
Yeah. John Ball, he asks a question. You've already mentioned Charlie Bronson, of course. Were you on a wing with any big names from the criminal world? Was there anybody else who you can think of? I mean, in the time that you were in prison, big names?
So, look, you know, there are so many, really. I mean, I'm not one for names, but, There was many people who you would know, believe you me, all of them.
Probably all in there at the time. The train robbers, Frankie Fraser, the Richardsons, the Freys.
Look, I know them all. I'm not one for names, like I said, but look, Steve, you're talking about these people. You'd come out of your cell and there'd be 4 cells down. I mean, literally, this is it. So, that's just the way it was. That's just the way it was. Because we was all Cat A's, so we'd have to all go to the same places.
Yeah. A. Taylor says, well done, man, to you. You've turned things around and now you're helping others. You should be applauded. So that's a nice thing from A. Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's talk about the 2 projects that you've got coming up. You've got your book, which is out and coming out as a hard copy, obviously, as soon as we get out of this lockdown situation. Tell us about the name of the book and a little bit about it. Give it a bit of a plug.
The Monkey Puzzle Tree, Steve, I'm not just saying it. I mean, the publishers have got it. They're unbelievably excited about it because this is a real experience for a reader, which is what I wanted. Again, it's everything that the book is, but it's my gift to the world because it's about me.
Where's
now,
the name come from? Where's the name?
The Monkey Puzzle, right? The Monkey Puzzle Tree. When I was a young kid in Ireland, in my little back garden, which was like my world pretty much, Steve, there was a monkey puzzle tree in the back garden. Now, the monkey puzzle tree is very central to some of the plots as it goes through. I can't say too much about it, but I will say this. My uncle then in them days, he'd tell me magical stories about the monkey puzzle tree. The monkey puzzle tree is the most resilient tree in the fern family. They can live to be 1,000 years old, Steve, right? They're very solitary, really armoured and spiky. Many people have said to me close to me, you're like that, Steve, as well. But he used to tell me a lot of stories that when I was a kid, like, be careful of talking when you're in front of the monkey puzzle tree, because if it hears you, it can take the power of speech and stuff like that. So there's a lot of magical stuff in this book, which is woven in really in a wonderful way. And it's quite central to what happens to me as I go through the book. It's like, I'll tell you what the book's like, Steve, for people who have seen Once Upon a Time in America.
Yeah.
Where it goes back and forth. There's a lot of backstory in it. It's like that, Steve. I've written it like that. It's unbelievably gripping. It's unbelievably gripping. I mean, the people who have read it, my friends, they've been up to 2, 3 in the morning. They can't put it down because it's just the way I've written it. They've got to know what happens next, right?
Yeah.
And people won't be disappointed because again, I've kept to the authenticity of it, of the story. Now I've had to change names in the old days round. I've had to change some of the scenes round, obviously for protective purposes. But the second part of my life, if you want to call it that, all the famous people and politicians and director generals and peace people and all the people I work with, all their proper names are in it as a social proof. So it's, I've kept to the story. I've just had to protect everyone, obviously. And, and there's going to be the film, Steve, of it as well.
Yeah, as they say, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. But yeah, you're saying you're going from a book now to the screenplay as well, which is, it's great to hear because it is a very difficult thing to do, to go from a book to a screenplay. But it sounds as if you've got that in hand now. So you've got a film company, we've got a director, etc., attached to it now as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got someone wonderful. She's president of the British Film Festival here. She judges films, but she's got unbelievable credits in the industry and all that. Unbelievably influential, and again, she was kind of a friend of mine, Steve, over the last 4 years. And she was aware of my work and that what I was doing. But when she started to see about the story and different stuff, she said, "Look, I must make this with you, Steve. This is a wonderful story because it's very emotive, Steve. It doesn't paint this life as being. It paints it as it is. There's no whole bars." But it's a lot more of a human, inspirational story of redemption
Yeah.
which is really, really experiential for the reader. I mean, there's so much that people will identify within there because I overcome so much, Steve. You know, so it's brave. It's bravely written. It's bravely written, Steve.
Yeah, that's good, mate. That's good. John Ball says he had a monkey puzzle tree in his garden. He says they're nasty bastards and they've got very sharp leaves. Cheers for that, John. A. Taylor says he's looking forward to the film. David Last's got another question. He says, what stands out about your story to make it a good film?
That it's very unique. And do you know what? It's a real story. It's a human story about overcoming unbelievable adversity, which people don't come back from. I mean, I come back from addiction, all of this stuff, you know, and I've gone on, Steve, you know, I've gone on to be a peace ambassador, to be nominated for an International Peace Prize, a lot of other stuff. So it's very unique, and it's told very bravely.
Tell us a bit about the peace ambassador situation. What does that entail, and what do you do?
I do a lot of humanitarian stuff, Steve. A lot of this people won't hear about because we don't talk about it. Philanthropic stuff, you know, through businesses. I mean, I'm on the boards and I'm a shareholder of different businesses now, but you know, I try to make things better in many ways in different countries abroad. I mean, I'm on the board of a pharmaceutical company, for instance, right? I'm a shareholder of that. That's got a unbelievably innovative product in the open wound industry. There's nothing close to it. It's saving many lives, especially in Africa, open wounds, all of this stuff. I mean, I don't talk about none of this stuff, and there's much more other stuff that I do. But because of the public speaking and the stuff we was doing, you know, and we still tried to do, I was awarded Ambassador of Peace the other year by the Universal Peace Federation, by the Secretary General there. And then, look, you know, I mean, I was on a national tour with one of the ex-highest ranking police officers, Asian officers in this country. I mean, he'd left the police force then. We didn't know each other way back when, of course, obviously. But he'd left the police force to do more, to make things better. You know, he faced a lot of institutional racism, all of that stuff in the police force. Do you know what I mean? So he wanted to make things better. And you know what? When we met at that point in our life, I mean, it's for two people who couldn't have been further apart, Steve.
Yeah.
In everything. But, you know, we wanted to make things better. It's just as simple as that. You know, it's as simple as that. And it's about public speaking. It was about coaching. It was about talking about our experiences and trying to save people maybe bad choices and letting them know that they had greatness in them and value, and try and support people to do their best in life, you know. And for me, a lot of it for me was not go back and make the mistakes that I made, certainly knowing there was better ways to do it, Steve.
Yeah, 100%. So what's the time scale for the book? The book's out, is the book out July, did you say?
Well, I'm happy you asked this because there's wonderful people there who are so many people waiting for this. Now, the book is with the publishers. There's photos in it, Steve, absolutely everything. We're working very, very closely. Obviously, it has to be right. It has to be bang on. One of the things was people can go into my website, www.stephenwithaph.gillen.com. They can pre-order in there. You know, there's many people already have done, bless them. Yeah. And for the people who do, you know, we're going to pick some of them out of there, give them access to some behind the scenes tickets when the film's getting made, right? Yeah. So there's other stuff. We're trying to add as much value as possible, but it's going to be out, I would say, in the next 7 to 10 days at the most in digital form.
Brilliant.
Now, the problem is, Steve, you know, because of this COVID thing, all the titles and all the publishing houses are selling their books, obviously, through their websites, Steve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So because there's no book fairs or anything, you know, so this is why.
Yeah.
But as soon as we can, you know, as soon as we can, things are easing now, then it's going to be in all the bookshops, you know, around the world all at once. So it will be in the bookshops.
Good stuff. John Pooh says, Steve, you should get Stephen in for these so-called Qatar and Premier League TV right talks, which, yeah, that would be good. A. Taylor says, teaming up with the bloke from the police force would send a powerful message, which is very inspiring. So that's another positive message. Steve, I mean, you've done well to walk away from crime, very well to walk away from it. But, you know, were you ever tempted to go back? Was there ever a situation where, you know, someone picked the phone up and said, look, can we have a meet? And you've popped down and, you know, he said, look, we've got a great bit of work on. Have you had that situation, or do your mates respect you a bit more for what you've done?
Look, you know, you can't please everyone, Steve. You know that, you never will. You don't have to. It's about doing what's right and what you believe in. I mean, you know, I mean, I'd gone back and forth from that life, you know, in the sense I lived in that life, in and out of prison and all that for most of my life. But when I really come to the end of it, after I come out of that, that was it for me, you know. So it was a long way. Oh, shit.
It's all right. We still got you. Whoop, he's gone. Hopefully he hasn't been nicked for using his phone. Worst reception we've ever had. Yeah, he's gone. Robbie says, what's the thoughts on the takeover? Do you think it'll happen? Well, 6 o'clock tonight, I will be joined by Michael Chopra. So I'll be back on in here an hour. I'm going to go and get something to eat. But Stephen Gillen, we did come to the end of the interview, so at least we didn't miss out. Hope you enjoyed that. Something a bit different. Get yourself on his website and obviously try and get his book as well, The Monkey Puzzle Tree, and keep an eye out for his film. But I will be back at 6 o'clock later on with Michael Chopra for 1 hour to talk Newcastle United. Take care. Thanks for joining the podcast. See you later.